you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is actually going to be a brand new build. This is called the Lich, and this is a Magicka Necromancer for the Harrowstorm DLC. Now, people have been waiting a very long time for me to produce one of these, and now you've of course got one. This is themed slightly. It does have a very unusual choice of sets. Well, one of them at least, but we'll get to that in a bit. And of course, this is built around survivability, sustain, damage output, and all that good stuff. Both single target and AoE, and this should be fairly simple to use for most. Although, just bear in mind, of course, the Necromancer is an advanced class. It does have kind of a learning curve. But just remember, of course, at the same time, you can just spam buttons and things will come out and it'll be awesome. But of course, if you understand more, then you can make more use of it and it can be much more effective. But don't worry, that is all going to be explained. As per, I'm going to go through every single detail you possibly need, and everything hopefully should make sense by the end of it. So, first of all, we're going to look into our stats. We are using a potion, of course, to make sure everything is up and running. We are on 38k max magicka, 19.6k max health, which is huge. We're on 10k max stamina and 864 recovery. We're on 3k spell damage and 50.4% crit chance. Now, the resists are a little low, but you can put on a resistance buff if you want, or you might have one in your group. We've got 64 points into max magicka, of course, because we have so much health. We don't actually need any of that in here or anything. We're using the Shadow Mundustone, of course, and we are a stage 4 vampire. You can change this if you prefer, but I really like stage 4 vampire. I'm sticking to it. Now, we're using flat stat food, max health, max magicka, because we don't really need the extra recovery, because we've got it covered in our rotation, our skills we're using and all that good stuff. But if you do find you're struggling, you can change to this stuff. Failing that, you can use Witch Mothers instead, which is a bit cheaper, just not so much on the highest side of things with health recovery and such. It'll just be max magic, max health, and mag recovery. You won't have the health recovery with it. It's not that much difference, but the choice is yours. Just bear in mind, of course, this is lesser stat than this, which means your output for your skills and your light attacks and your heavy attacks and all that good stuff will actually be less. So this is for sustain if you don't have it in your group, but if you do have lots and lots of extra recovery, lots of synergies, maybe you've got loads of Holofang running around, that can actually help, and this will be fine for you. Now, I do effectively myself run in groups with people that have an abundance of Holofang, and they do stack as well, so I don't ever need this. But if you choose to, it's entirely up to you. Depends, again, on your group. Now, we're going to go into the skills. So these are all going to be explained, of course, where they come from, what morphs to get, and all that good stuff. Then I'll go into the passives afterwards. This does actually show a little bit cheaper than it should do, but that's because of a passive. Again, we'll get to those in a moment. But everything is going to be explained, why it's there, what it does, and all that good stuff. And you're going to see a demonstration of each one as well. Now, this starts off as, so Stalk and Blast Bones starts off as Blast Bones, morph it into Stalk and Blast Bones. It's the second ability down in the Gravelord skill line. This will spawn a skeleton, and it will basically charge after its target and explode. Now, this will do flame damage in area of effect, by the way. It is direct, yes, but it's area of effect damage. Now, this does have a bonus to it. The longer the distance it is chasing its target per second, the more damage it will do by 10% per second it's running. However, this has been fixed on PTS. It used to just be really awkward and not chase its target or stand still and all that good stuff. That does now work properly, but this jumps from wherever you place it. So, if you jump, if your skeleton jumps from 2 meters away, it will do X amount of damage. If it jumps from 28 meters away, it will do the same damage. However, if your target is running away and the skeleton physically has to chase the target, the longer the chasing goes on, the more damage it will do. Before, it used to just run from a long, long distance. Now it doesn't do that anymore. It does a flat jump. So there is a difference to a running away target, but as far as range is concerned, if it's a static fight, it doesn't matter whether you're 2 meters away or 28 meters away. The damage is exactly the same. Now, next up is Barb Trap. This is our main kind of damage buff that we use all the time. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. This is the last ability to unlock, so you need Fighters Guild 8 for this, and it starts off as Trap Beast. Morph it to Barbed Trap. This basically goes on the ground and puts down a trap which captures the target. Now, obviously, bosses can't be stunned or immobilized or anything like that, but this will still fire, it will still do the damage, and above all, it will give you minor force, which will increase all critical damage that you do by 10%. Enemies that can be CC'd will be immobilized for 2 seconds when they get caught in the trap, so it is a crowd control as well, if you like. But for the most part, the reason we really want this down all the time is for that bonus there, that extra crit damage. It lasts for 18 seconds as well, so it's a massive uptime, but we will be using this every single rotation. Now, next up is Mystic Siphon. This is also in our Gravelord skill line. It takes a while to get this one. It's the last ability to unlock. Starts off as Shocking Siphon, morph it to Mystic Siphon. This is very, very powerful indeed. This actually requires a corpse, however. So, when you have a corpse on the ground, whether it's friendly or enemy, or even if it's one of your pets, you can activate this from up to 28 meters away, and you will have a beam attached to you from the corpse's position. And while this is active, anything caught in the area of effect that is close to it will take damage over time. Over 12 seconds, it will do a massive amount of damage, ticking very, very fast. But every target caught in the beam will also take damage. And at the same time, this is a massive sustain bonus as well, because we get 1.2k Magicka over 12 seconds. And while slotted, your damage done is increased by 3%. So just for being on your bar as well, this increases all of your damage output. So it's a damage over time, it's a sustainability, and it gives you extra damage flat out. Now, next up is Inner Light. This is in the Mages Guild skill line. This is a very simple ability. It just sits on our bar doing nothing. First ability to unlock starts off as Mage Light, morph it to Inner Light, and this gives us 5% increase to max Magicka, and it gives us Major Prophecy increase in our crit chance by 10%. I know it says 2191, but that's 10%. The active ability of this you do not need, so don't press it, just leave it on your bar. That's a bonus for just being there. Now, Ricochet Skull. This is very important, of course. This is in our Gravelord skill line again. You can see the theme here. Obviously, we're using as much damage output from our damage skill line as possible. Its first ability to unlock starts off as Flame Skull, morph it to Ricochet Skull. Now, this one is very simple. It's a direct damage hit. You can do it from range or close up. Doesn't matter. It's got a maximum range of 28 meters, actually. But every third cast of this ability deals 20% more damage and bounces to 2 nearby targets. So the first 2 casts will be normal. They'll just be direct thrown skull at the enemy. And the last one, you'll put both your hands together, fire an extra large one, and it will ricochet amongst lots of targets. So that's a really, really cool skill. We will be putting this in our rotation quite a bit. So just make sure that you get this unlocked ASAP. Very fun skill. Next up is, of course, Shooting Star. This does not have to be here if you don't have it. Now, this is in the Mages Guild. You need Mages Guild 10 for this. Starts off as Meteor, morph it to Shooting Star. Essentially, this is on the bar for passives, which we'll come into later. This is a very strong ability, but honestly, it's mostly there just for stats. So I wouldn't use this that often. I'd mostly use my back bar ultimate because that one is absolutely insane, and we're coming to that in a moment. Back bar, of course. Necrotic Potency. This is in the Bone Tyrant skill line. It's a third ability to unlock, so you are going to have to put a couple of these on your bar to level up the skill line. Starts off as Bitter Harvest, morph it to Necrotic Potency. This is extremely important. While it's slotted, your damage taken is reduced, so on your back bar you actually take less damage, which is handy. But when you have corpses on the ground, friendly, pets, or enemies, you activate this, and you will actually gain 6 ultimate per corpse. And you will heal for 2 seconds per corpse. So you do get a heal every 1 second for 2 seconds, but each corpse will increase the duration by 2 seconds. So if you have 6 bodies on the ground, you get 12 seconds heal over time. Very, very nice indeed. But just bear in mind, of course, if you consume, say, 5 corpses, and you get loads of ultimate and loads of healing back, and you have a 10-second heal over time, if you then consume a smaller cluster of corpses, say 3, that heal over time will replace the original one. It won't add on top of it. So just bear that in mind. But this is a very nice heal and ultimate regen that you can just use all the time. I do use it in my rotations occasionally, especially if I'm in a group and I want to throw out my main ultimate a lot. But keep this on your bar at all times. It's really, really powerful. I wouldn't leave home without this. Now, next up is Unstable Wall of Fire. Now, this is called Wall of Fire simply because we have a flame staff on. Now, if you had any different types of elements on your staff, this would be a different name. But this is in the Destruction Staff skill line. It's the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Unstable Wall of Elements. The reason for that particular morph is because this one explodes upon reactivation of it or when it expires. This goes on the ground, does damage every 1 second, and all enemies caught inside of it will take damage. Now, while we're using a Flame Staff, the enemies can, of course, be burnt. If they receive a burning status effect, then you will actually do more damage with this particular skill to those targets. Anyone that is burning at the moment. So, if anybody else does burning status effects to the target as well, you will, of course, do more damage to them just because of the type of weapon we are using. So if somebody comes in with a Dragon Knight and sets fire to stuff and it's got burning status effects going all over the place, burning enemies take 20% more damage from this ability. Just bear that in mind, understand your status effects, and if you don't understand status effects, don't worry, there is a how to get good video linked in the description for that. Now, Inner Light is on both bars, because we want the max Magicka on both bars, and the crit on both bars. However, if you are struggling with your survival, and you do want to put on a damage shield, you can replace this with Harness Magicka, and you'll be just fine. You will have lesser Magicka on the back bar, you'll lose a tiny bit of damage output, not enough to be noticeable for most, but you'll have your survival here. Now this obviously comes from the light armor skill line. Now you must have 5 pieces of light armor to be able to use this ability, so if you do break your armor, make sure you repair it quickly, otherwise you may not be able to use the skill. This is very simply put, a damage shield that absorbs damage. Now it can't go any higher than 50% of your max health, so just bear in mind, of course, the more health you have, the stronger the shield is going to be at maximum, because your 50% health is higher. But this does still also scale off of max Magicka, so if you've got a very, very low pool, this can be still quite low. But the highest it can go is half of your maximum health. Now also, if you do take damage from magic abilities, you can absorb them, and you'll get Magicka back. But of course, if it's a massive hit, it'll take the whole shield off straight away, and you'll only get one hit of it back. If it persists, if it stays with you while you're being hit, then the first 3 hits will actually give you stuff back. It's really, really handy. But above all, it's a protection skill. Next up, of course, is Skeletal Arcanist. This is Arcanist or Arcanist, I don't care how you want to pronounce it. 4th ability unlocked in the Gravelord skill line. Starts off as Skeletal Mage. Morph it to this morph, not the Archer. The Archer is for physical damage. This one is magic based. Now, this is very simple, in fact. It lasts for 16 seconds. It is a pet. And after the 16 seconds, it goes away again. So you'll have to recast it. It's not like a Sorcerer pet where it stays with you the whole time. You have to recast this. Now, it will cast lightning effects at the target, and it will hit all other enemies in the area that are in range every 2 seconds. So this is a direct hit, but it is area of effect. So just bear that in mind. Also, of course, it is shock damage. So we've got several different elements here. We've got flame from the Ricochet Skull. We've got flame from Blast Bones. We've got flame from the Unstable Wall of Elements. But we also have lightning damage from this particular pet. And our next ability... Oh, this is lightning as well. And our next ability is, of course, Avid Boneyard. Now, this is the 3rd ability in this skill line. It's Gravelord again. Starts off as Boneyard, morph it to Avid Boneyard. You can use the other morph if you prefer. It's just got a slightly different effect. But this is ice damage. So we do 3 different types of damage. Fire, ice, and lightning. Now, this goes on the ground. Does massive area of effect damage over time. But this particular morph, we have decided to take because we can take the synergy ourselves. Now, that's very beneficial for us, not just for the damage output of the actual synergy, but also from the heal that we get, and also, again, from our Undaunted passives, which are coming up shortly. There is a very good reason for having this particular morph, and it does contribute towards your sustain. Just bear in mind, of course, this is also beneficial if there are corpses around. So if there's a corpse on the ground and you cast this, it will consume the dead body, and it will do 50% more damage. So the way to make this strong is to actually utilize a dead body on the ground. Maybe it's a friendly, maybe it's an enemy, maybe it's a pet. Timing is key, but make sure there's a body on the ground when you use this if you can. Now, next up is our main ultimate. This is the Glacial Colossus. It starts off as Frozen Colossus. You get it at level 12 of the Gravelord skill line, and you want to morph it to this particular version. This will do ice damage as well. It will spawn a massive Colossus. It will hit 3 times in area of effect. On the last hit, all enemies in the area, if they can be stunned, will be stunned for 4 seconds. This is huge CC and massive damage. And one more vital point. This applies major vulnerability to all enemies hit for 8 seconds. Everyone doing damage to those targets will have their damage increased by a whopping 30%. Enemies hit, though, cannot be affected again for another 20 seconds. But that 20-second cooldown starts on the first hit. So there's a 12-second cooldown, or immunity phase, between the end tick of this and when you can reapply that particular bonus again. So if you have multiple necromancers in your group, make sure that when major vulnerability is gone, you count down from 12 before you throw out another one. Just bear that in mind. You will have to stagger them, but they are incredibly powerful. Now, although the ultimate cost is 225 and looks quite expensive, don't forget we do have necrotic potency, and we can actually gain ultimate really, really fast by sucking up dead bodies. So this is your main ultimate over this one. This one you're only using a no shit moment when you don't have quite enough for this, but 9 times out of 10, especially due to the cost being very, very close, you should really be using this one all the time. It's very powerful. Now, the reason for Shooting Star is going to be in the passives, which we're now coming up to. That one can wait a little while though. It's further down the line. So, first of all, Gravelord. This is very important. Make sure you do get your passives, and above all, make sure you read them. When your Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender dies, the cost of your next Blast Bone, or Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender is reduced by 50%. So that's why, if you look here, you'll notice that my Blast Bones is actually really, really cheap. And so is my Skeletal Mage. That is because I've used the Blast Bones in the past, and it is now giving me a bonus. Now, this bonus can be seen in your character sheet here, reusable parts. So if you use it, it's gone, and you can see, of course, that's expensive now. But the cost goes down again when it explodes. So if that explodes, or this dies, the cost goes down. So our sustain is really, really high due to that massive bonus there. So that helps a lot. Now, just bear in mind, of course, you don't really have to keep an eye on that, because it's going to be all covered for you, but you will need to understand what the passives do, so then you can make more sense of them. Now, this increases your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health by 10% for each Gravelord ability slotted. We have 3 on the front bar, we have 3 on the back bar. That means that on both bars, when the target is low health, anyone under 25% will have a 30% increased crit chance for those targets. Now remember, we're on 50% at the moment without any external buffs from anybody else. That puts us to 80 during execute. That is why, instead of having an actual execute as such, we have a passive bonus to doing more damage when we are obviously hitting low health targets. It's not guaranteed, no, but you can increase your chance of it. Now that does mean, of course, if you put another ability on this bar, say for example you wanted to replace this with Avid Boneyard or the Skeletal Mage on the front or whatever, you can increase it by a further 10% per skill, but just remember you're going to sacrifice your overall damage output by taking off your max magic bonus. So it's a balance of things. If you want to go 100% for the sake of it, yes, you can do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have your overall performance any higher than it was already. So this is a very nice passive, but don't overindulge in it, because if you do, you could sacrifice your overall performance during the rest of the fight. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration are increased by 1500. We do not need sharpened, we do not need any points in Elfborn. Our penetration is really high, and all we have to do is have an ability active. So if you have this active, which you should have all the time anyway, or your pet, or this ability on the ground, you're good to go. Basically, all you need to do is keep up your rotation. You'll constantly have that penetration bonus, meaning you'll do more damage to the targets because you go through that much of their resistances. Increases your damage done with damage over time effects. Now, this is very, very nice indeed. Now, next up is Bone Tyrant. We do have one ability here, so it is important. Whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters of you, you restore 200 magicka and stamina. And that is just by having an ability slotted. So if you are on your back bar with necrotic potency, you will actually get this benefit to your sustain just for it being there. Now, you can put one on your front bar if you prefer. In fact, if you wanted to take off Shooting Star, you could replace it with your Bone Goliath transformation. Doesn't matter which morph you take, to be honest. You just put it there and you're good. So if you prefer to, you can do that and it'll help your sustain. But if you want the flat damage output, obviously we're going to come to the major skill passives. That is there for that. Now, reduces the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 15% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. So if you have consumed a corpse and you are getting this healing over time, you will benefit from this passive. Increases your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted. Again, while on this bar, you benefit from that. And if you put the Bone Colossus on the front bar, or the Goliath rather, you will actually get this as well. And this increases your max health. There's no tricks for this one. You just get more health for being a Necromancer. Perfect. Live and Death, of course, we're not using any of these abilities, but you can, of course, slot the res ulti on your back or front bar if you prefer. You never know when you might need it. You can resurrect 3 people instantly. But anyway, this when you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. So if you have a dot or curse or anything on you when you're using your heal over time here, you will actually have a stronger heal. While you have a live and death ability slotted, your critical strike chance with your healing abilities is increased by up to 20% in proportion to the severity of the target's wound. So if you are using that healing ability and you have one of these on your bar, say for example this is on your front bar and maybe this is running, that will be stronger by chance because you'll have increased crit heals. When you use an ability on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate. This can happen once every 16 seconds. All you need to do is use this ability here or this ability here. This grabs 6 ultimate per corpse anyway, but you get a further 10 once every 16 seconds because this is used on a corpse, as is this. So this will work, or this, doesn't matter which one is fired as long as it's once every 16 seconds, which it will be. While you have a Blast Bones, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender active, your Magicka and Stamina recovery is increased by 200. So at the beginning when I popped my potion, you saw that I had about 864, there we go. Now, if we have a pet active, I'm at 1,200 recovery. That's a big difference. Very nice indeed. So, again, passives are key. Make sure you get them. Now, we are, of course, going to get the Destro passives. This is very important. We are using 2 different staves. We're using a lightning on the front, and we're using a flame on the back. Now, your heavy attacks from your lightning staff actually does splash damage. So if you are struggling with your sustain, not only is the lightning staff easier to sustain with because it is a channeled ability, but all the damage you do per tick is spread amongst targets around you, doing 100% of the damage done on the initial target. So that's actually very, very beneficial. So do pay attention to that. This one will give you increased penetration technically with your Destro ability, so you go through more resistances of the target, so that's really nice as well, especially alongside of our pen passive from the Necromancer skill lines. This increases your chance to apply burning, concussed, or chilled status effects. Now, concussion, chilled, and burning, they're explained in the How to Get Good video as well, are all chance based on flame, lightning, and ice. For using a Destro staff, or for holding one in fact, your chance to do so is increased. So if you have anything else on another bar and you swap over to it, you lose this passive. But because we've got double Destro, we have it all the time. And we are using 3 different types of damage anyway. We are using fire, ice, and lightning. We're using all 3 elements. This is very important. When you have a flame staff equipped, your damage done with single target abilities is increased by 8%. When you have a lightning staff equipped, your damage done with area of effect is increased by 8%. Now, this one here, the skull, is direct damage. Yes, we've got it on a lightning bar. Yes, this would be beneficial from flame. But this is the only single ability, single target ability technically, that we're really using. The rest of it is all area of effect. So we use the flame staff on the back for the extra damage from the wall of elements, especially for targets burning. But everything else we're doing, this pet does area of effect. Boneyard is area of effect. Glacial Colossus is, it's really hard to say, is area of effect. Mystic Siphon is area of effect. Blast Bones is area of effect. The only one that isn't is this. So, we use lightning on the front, flame on the back. That will make more sense when we get to the rotation, but that's the reasoning for that. Now, this here will give you magic back if you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability. That does include your light, heavy attacks, and wall of elements. So just bear in mind, sometimes you might want to let the enemy just die rather than spamming loads of skills, because you actually get juice back from it. Or heavy attack it because you get stuff back from that as well. Now, we are using 5 pieces of light armor. Of course, you want to get every single one of these. They're all beneficial, but the more pieces you wear, the better. Obviously, you must have 5 pieces, though, for this particular build. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the end passives here, which are very, very important. So, this will increase your effectiveness versus snares, basically. So, you are not as slow per piece worn, and reduces the cost of sprints, which is quite handy. This increases your mag recovery by 4% per piece worn, and reduces the cost of your abilities. This will increase your spell resistance per piece worn. These need 5. That will increase your crit rating by 10%, and this will increase your spell penetration. Again, we have stupid spell pen as a Necromancer already. This is insane. We are using 1 piece of medium. You won't need all of these, especially not this one, because this requires 5 pieces anyway. But I would recommend getting athletics for the dodge roll reduction to cost, and of course the movement speed for sprint, And I would also recommend getting this because this increases your stamina recovery and reduces the cost of abilities. Just remember, we are using one stamina ability. You can change this to Sigic Order if you want, but you might struggle with sustain. So that's a choice you can make, but I personally prefer the Beast Trap. This will require us to sustain stamina-wise, so those passives are actually quite helpful, even though we're only using one piece. Heavy armor, of course, you want the first 3. These 2 are not relevant because they're 5 pieces, but these 3 are small, but they do help. This increases your physical and spell resistance per piece worn. We've got just the 1. This will increase your health recovery, although that's not important because we're a vampire anyway, but you will get 108 magicka and stamina back once every 4 seconds just for taking damage. And this will increase your max health by 2%. Our health is huge anyway, but this helps. Now, we are a stage 4 vampire, of course. This is very important. Stage 2 or higher will give you a 10% increase to mag and stam recovery. And, of course, undeaf. 3 or higher will actually give you a reduction to damage taken depending on the amount of health you have left. So under 50% health, the lower your health bar goes, the less damage you take, up to a maximum of 33% damage reduction flat out. It's really, really powerful. This sneaky one requires stage 4. I do use that quite a lot, so I keep stage 4 anyway. I play all content on all roles and all characters on stage 4. If you want to change this, that's your choice. Fighters Guild, of course, you are going to need these. Intimidating Presence you do want because it will reduce the cost of this. You do want this if you want a tiny increase. So Beast Trap does do damage. Not a lot, but it does do damage. We do have an increase to damage over time, which that effectively is. And you will increase your weapon damage by having it on your bar. So if you've got some spare points, take this. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. You can dump it completely. But you definitely want to get this. Your ultimate regenerates by 9 per undead, Daedra, or werewolf kill. So if you kill anything that's a vampire, a skeleton, or a wolf, werewolf specifically, you'll get 9 ultimate for the privilege. Not to mention, of course, the 10 ultimate back once every 16 seconds for using a corpse ability. And, of course, 6 ultimate here for every single corpse. So if you're running around killing loads and loads of undead and then sucking up all the bodies, you're going to be using this ultimate left, right, and center. Now, Mage's Guild is very important, of course, for these abilities here. Now, just bear in mind, of course, you can put Degeneration here for the extra damage over time ability, but that will alter your rotation. You'll have to lose 1 cast of this skull, which I'm coming to shortly, and the damage output is actually the same. It's just some people prefer to have damage over time rather than loads of single target spammables, so for those types it can help, and of course it gives you major sorcery as well if you don't have expensive Magicka pots, so that's a choice. But again, the damage output is the same whether you have this on or not. So if you sacrifice this amount of Magicka for this damage over time and minus 1 of these fires or shots, then it's the same no matter what. Same figures. Now, so that's a choice. But anyway, passives. This one reduces the cost of Magicka and health of your Mage Guild abilities. That's not important. We don't really use them unless, of course, you're using this. This increases the duration of your Mage Guild abilities. That does affect this if you are using it, but above all, of course, if you are using Shoot and Star, this increases the damage over time on the floor. This increases your max Magicka by 2% and your recovery by 2% for each Mage's Guild ability slotted. So for having this on the bar and this on the bar, which is why this is really here, this will give you a maximum of 4% increase to your max Magicka and 4% increase to your recovery. Same on the back bar if you have any here, especially if you don't use a shield and you put in a light on this bar as well. And then, of course, if you cast a Mage's Guild ability, your next light attack within 5 seconds will be 40% stronger. So if you do use Shoot and Star or you are using Degeneration, your light attacks obviously will be stronger for the next one, but not consistently after that. It's just the 1 attack per skill cast. Undaunted, of course, is essential. If you take a synergy of any kind, you will restore 4% of your max resources. Health, magic, and stamina. Remember this ability here. We can take our own synergy. Every 20 seconds, you can take a synergy of a specific kind. Once the cooldown is gone, you can take it again. Every synergy in the game you can take personally as any role. But every single one you do take, each of its own kind, has a 20-second cooldown. So once every 20 seconds, if you take your own synergy, you will get 4% of your max resources back. No brainer. Take the synergies. Increase your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2%. We're using 3 different types of armor. Each type will give you that 2%. We're wearing 1 heavy piece, that's type 1. We're wearing 1 medium piece, that's type 2. We're wearing 5 light pieces, that's type 3. There's your 6%. Very nice indeed. And of course, we are a high elf. And people thought I was a Breton. So, we have this very, very important ability here. This will give us 640 magicka or stamina back based on whichever is the lowest if you use a class ability. So as long as we use a Necromancer ability, we can get back 640 stamina once every 6 seconds, which means this is very sustainable. Also, while using a channeling ability, which we're actually not, or anything with the cast time, which we're not, we take 5% less damage. That's not important. This increases our max magic by 2,000, and this increases our spell damage by 258. You can use other races if you prefer, but this one I personally preferred because it topped out with more damage on this particular setup. If you want to use Breton, you're going to barely see any difference, but you are going to have much better resistances and reduction to cost, although the sustain is absolutely fine anyway. Choices are yours. If you want to change it to a Wood Elf, be my guest. I'm not going to complain at you. Just whatever you prefer. But flat out, this one was actually really, really nice. The most important thing for me on this particular one, apart from the flat spell damage, which is really good, was the return for that stamina every time I'm using my class abilities once every 6 seconds, because then I can keep up the beast trap with no issues and still be able to block and dodge and all that good stuff. Alchemy, of course, this is the most important passive in the game in my opinion. I said it in every single video. 30% increase on your potion duration. We are using sorcery and prophecy and intellect potions, which are here. They are expensive. You will have to make them yourself or buy them off somebody else who can make them. But for having that bonus, we do actually have a 47.6 second duration on these rather than around 36, 37 seconds. And the cooldown is 45. You have infinite time on these consumable buffs as long as you always take a potion when it's back ready to be used again. Don't just use it when you're really low. Use it all the time and keep these bonuses with you. Now, we're going to go into the gear. So, don't be surprised by the first one, but you can change this if you like. Now, you do not have to have the perfected version of this. You can get the regular one from normal mode. You can do it the basic version if you want with +0, so no additional bosses. Just go in, kill everything. On the last boss, you can get weapons. Now, the only difference is, of course, you'll have 1k less max magicka, excluding stack and bonuses, of course. Now, you want the Lightning Staff of Soroya, and you want it infused with an increased weapon and spell damage bonus on it. Now, this does have spell damage. It has minus Slayer increase in your damage to trial, dungeon, and arena monsters by 5%. 1k max magicka, almost 1.1, if you have the normal version. 2k if you don't. And when you deal direct damage with a single target attack, so your light attacks basically, you will put a Ring of Fire underneath you. Now, as long as you stay in this and continue to do damage, this won't run out. And it will continuously tick up stacks of spell damage up to 20 stacks, or 30 spell damage each time. If you move around too much and don't come back into the circle before it runs out and continue to do damage, you will lose it completely. So this may take a little bit of practice for some people to get used to. Now, if you don't have this, or you don't feel like farming it, or you're just not into trials whatsoever, this is absolutely fine. You don't have to have this. You can also work with a Burning Spell Weave. Yes, Burning Spell with Lightning Staff, believe it or not, and that will work just fine because your Wall of Elements is enough to make that actually fire. But of course, if you've got access to Skaven Mage or anything like that, you can use that instead for the time being. I would highly recommend you get Soroya, but whatever else you put in place of this is entirely up to you. Just make sure it's got some form of spell bonus increase on the 5-piece. Next up, of course, on the back bar, because you don't need this on both bars because it carries over, is the Maelstrom Inferno Staff, which is the bane of a lot of people's existence. If you don't have access to this, because maybe you don't have the DLC, or if you don't have the VMA actually completed yet, first of all, there's a guide on my channel. Secondly, keep going, you'll get it, but you can, of course, use a Willpower Staff in place of this. Failing that, of course, if you are using Crafted Set for your front bar, you can double bar it. So you can go with maybe Julianus or something like that for the time being, and that will also work out fine. But if you're going to optimize it, Soroya on the front, Maelstrom on the back. This is very important, by the way. While your Wall of Elements is down, your light and heavy attacks have increased damage added to them. So make sure your Wall of Elements never falls off if you can help it. It's really important to keep that down. It's your main bread and butter skill. Keep it on the floor. We are, of course, using Zaan on the head and shoulders. We're using one heavy, one medium. And this is obviously a very important set. It's really, really powerful. Just for doing damage with your light attacks or heavy attacks, you have a 20% chance to create a beam of fire that attaches to the target and does damage over 5 seconds, getting progressively stronger every tick. This has a fairly large cooldown on it. There's a pretty big gap, but the damage output is absolutely insane. Has a spell crit bonus as well, so your critical chance is up. If you don't have this, you can of course use Groftar or Vulcan Scoria or whatever fits within your accessibility to content or gear or whatever. You can even use perhaps the new Necro set, which it did underperform, but it's actually quite nice and it's a bit themed as well. There isn't really any restriction on what you can use, but this one did top out for this particular build, so I would highly recommend this. Groftar is probably your second best if you want to go that way. Plus it's AoE as well, which means it'll do more damage than it does flat out because you're lightning stuff. Now the curveball. I said this was themed. We haven't got anything Necro-esque yet, have we? Well, technically we have. We do fire damage, we do ice damage, we do lightning damage. We've got a flame staff, we've got a lightning staff, we've got a flame monster set, so we're getting there. And now we've got Kalurian, which, if you are familiar with the game, comes from Fang Lair, where there's a nice Necromancer in there. Now, when you deal critical direct damage with a single target Magicka ability, which includes your light attacks from your flame staff, your lightning staff, or your ice staff, if you're using any of those, and your skull, your ricochet skull, anything like that that does direct single target damage will spawn a fire, ice, shock, or disease ball, which will do around 20k damage. So for just doing your rotation, you do 20k damage once every 10 seconds-ish. It does a lot more than that, obviously, when you're buffed and bonuses are applied, but that's actually quite healthy. It's a really nice proc. It's almost guaranteed to fire every single time it's off cooldown based on our rotation. And surprisingly, this actually outperformed versus Skaven Mage on this particular body piece setup. So with Sororia and Skaven Mage combined, this did more. This was really, really fun. So it looks cool, it's themed, and it bloody works. So enjoy. And of course, since we don't need any complicated bits and pieces, you don't actually have to go for weapons or anything like that. Now, just bear in mind, of course, if you are lucky enough to get a staff of this set, and you happen to not be going after Sororia because you don't like Trials or whatever, and you have Skaven Mage available, you can swap these around and put Skaven Mage on the body to have a higher uptime on it, and you can put Kalurian on the front bar, or maybe even both if you've got that, and that will work absolutely fine. But for the overall setup, you want Sororia on the front with 3 pieces of either jewelry or body pieces, doesn't matter which way round, probably easier to get the body pieces. Kalurian, you want 5 pieces, so 2 on the body, 3 on the jewelry, or a mix of whichever, doesn't matter. And then you want Zahn, helmet, and shoulders. You want Divines on absolutely everything, 1 Bloodthirsty, 2 infused. Both weapons are infused, by the way. There was a substantial difference on this particular setup by having this, and we didn't lack the crit chance because at Execute we have very high crit chance due to our passives. Now, champion points. We are pretty much the same for the red and green. That's what I have in most of my builds. But 72 points into Ironclad to reduce the direct damage we receive. 64 and 64 in Hardy and Elemental Defender to reduce the amount of everything else we take. 51 into Thick Skin to reduce the amount of damage over time we take, which also stacks with these as well. And of course, don't forget, if we have to break free, we have Unchained here. We have this passive. If you break free, your next stamina ability within 5 seconds is 80% cheaper, so make sure you fling out a Beast Trap. 19 points in a quick recovery to give us a 5% increase to healing received, which means, of course, we do have the Field Physician passive open, meaning that if we resurrect someone while we're trying to res them, while that timer is going up or the counter is spinning, we do actually take less damage. 44 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 into Tenacity to give us more return from our heavy attacks, and 75 in Arcanus as well to give us the 14% increased recovery to our Magicka, which is very high anyway, especially due to our passives. 72 in Tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll, and 4 points into Shadow War just because I'm not putting them anywhere else, got nothing to do with them. So that unlocks the Treasure Hunter passive, which means while you are farming your loot, you'll get higher quality items in chests. 56 into Elfborn to give us a 20% increase to crit damage. 64 into Elemental Expert, increasing all of our damage, so Flame, Frost, Shock, Magic, all that good stuff. And of course, 9 points into Staff Expert, and 66 into Master at Arms. We are doing a lot of direct damage. We are doing a lot of light attacks. We are using all of this type of damage. We're critting quite a lot. And of course, we have the Butcher passive now unlocked, which means our light and heavy attacks do more damage at low health. So our crit chance goes up at low health. We have Bloodthirsty to increase our damage at low health. And we have more damage output from here at low health. And we are using a lot of damage over time as well. So this will contribute to that, giving us a 23% bonus. And of course, for having 75 points in this particular tree, we have the Exploiter passive, meaning that anything that goes off balance gives us a bonus of 10% extra damage. Now, we're going to go over the rotation. So this is quite simple. for the most part, but it's going to take a bit of practice, because if you are not familiar with a Necromancer, and especially if you haven't paid attention to your passives, you're not going to understand why this is done. But basically, you want to make sure your pet is already active before the fight starts, but be aware, as soon as you aggro something, it's going to try and hit them. So be careful with that. But you want to have your pet active, and you want to put your beast trap down. And then we go to the back bar, and this is where you basically start. You put down your boneyard. If your pet is already active from your previous rotation, you will do this. You will light attack pet, light attack wall of elements, swap bars. We'll do this again over here so it's not so confusing. So, light attack boneyard, light attack pet, light attack wall, swap bars. The first rotation you don't have to recast him because he's already active, but the rest of the time you will. So, we'll pretend we're in the middle of a fight and he's already been up for a long time. We're in rotations. Light attack boneyard, light attack pet, light attack wall, swap. That's it, just 3 skills. Now if you want to, you can activate this to get some ultimate back if there's bodies on the ground. That's your choice, however. Just don't stay there too long. Now the front bar is relatively simple. We'll move, we don't need to move anything, do we? Yes we do. We'll move this dude over here. So we can use him. Front bar is very simple. Light attack blast bones. Light attack skull twice. He explodes, and there's a body. Light attack blast bones. Light attack consume the body with siphon. With this. Light attack skull again. Light attack blast bones. Light attack bootstrap swap. That sounds too much, I know, but we're now going to slow that down and make sense of it. The reason there is 2 skills between each blast bones is because when it's active, it's grayed out. So I can't use it until he explodes. That is just enough time to put in 2 light attack skills. Light skill, light skill. So, blast bones, while he's busy, light skull, light skull. Boom. Blast bones, consume the last one. Light attack skill, light attack skull. He's ready again. Blast bones, beast trap, swap, he'll blow up on the back bar. So, we're using 3 blast bones, but we're using 2 skills between each one. We'll do it quicker. Light blast bones, light skull, light blast bones, light siphon, light skull, light blast bones, light beast trap, swap. Split it up into 3 sections. Blast bones, skull, skull. Blast bones, siphon, skull. Blast bones, trap, swap. Then the back bar again is easy. Some of that, some of that, some of that. Back bar is the easiest part to get. Front part is in order on purpose. So just take your time, go really slowly, figure out that order. Once you get really smooth with it, it will fall just perfectly into place. Now if you look at my blast bones on the bar, when it grays out, look at it when it comes back, and you'll see that I'm just ready to press it. So let's imagine we're doing a front bar rotation. Gray, hit, one hit, blast bones, siphon, hit, should be ready now. Yes, beast trap, swap. Rotation, perfect. Blast bones, skull, skull, blast bones, siphon, skull, blast bones, beast trap, swap, reapply everything. Light pet, light wall, start again. And you just repeat that process over and over and over. Nothing has to change, except if you want to do that, suck up ultimate, or if you want to throw this dude down. Keep up your rotation and at execute, keep doing what you're doing, and you will increase your damage by default. So once again, just to recap over that, your front bar is in this order. Light attack blast bones, light attack skull twice. Light attack blast bones, light attack siphon, light attack skull. That's section 2. Light attack blast bones, this is your final one. Light beast trap swap. That's it. Rinse, repeat, over and over and over. It will take practice, but it will feel much, much easier once you get into the rhythm of it and you've understood where everything goes and why. So, I mean, if you're hitting the target dummy, by the way, there is a demonstration screenshot for you here. This can go anywhere between kind of 77 to 80. It goes up and down depending on how lucky you get with your crits, especially during the execute phase, which is really handy. But you're talking fairly healthy numbers, especially for single target and area of effect combined. Very, very good sustain, especially in trial situations where you've got lots and lots of different synergies and such going off. But if you need to change your food, like I said, it's entirely up to you. This is capable of all content, so don't panic about it not being, this horrible V word, viable for anything in particular. You are bringing a massive bonus to the group with that major vulnerability. You're doing a lot of area of effect damage. You're doing a lot of single target. You can sustain it. You can survive it. You're good to go with anything. Some content you might want to change a couple skills out, but that, again, is a choice that you are allowed to make, and it's entirely up to you what you do with it. So first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribing on YouTube already, please do hit that button. It is free. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you are aware when I upload videos. Also, if you want to help support outside of YouTube, there are some links in the info section or description below, if you like, for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com, where all the written guides are. Don't forget there's an add-on as well for All About Mechanics, and there's going to be a lot more stuff coming very, very soon. So, thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.